Are you starting out in property investment, wanting to take advantage of our hot property markets at the moment? Or perhaps you're looking to expand your existing property portfolio? What fees are you going to choose to pay? I bet you're thinking, none, Michael. Well, let's have a talk about that. Now, if you're a regular listener to my podcast, you know I usually have a guest on the show, but once a month or so, I love having these little private one-on-one chats with you where I get my thoughts across to you, and that's what today's show's about. But I'm going to have two segments for you. One where I'm going to be talking about some learning fees to the market that I don't want you to pay, but I'm going to make you aware of them. And the other is a chat about the type of people you should avoid if you want to become a successful property investor or to be successful in all areas of your life. But before I get into the main body of this podcast, talking about learning fees, I'd like to share with you 3 fees that you may not have thought of, but that I believe 2 you should avoid and 1 you should pay to make sure your property investment journey is a successful one. Now, while these may be a little bit obvious and they're paid up front, what's less obvious is how much they could cost you over the life of your investment. Now, even more concerning is that to the untrained eye, there may be appearance of no cost at all, particularly if pride and ego cloud your judgment. So let me explain what I'm getting at. The first fee that you should avoid is the built-in fee. Let me explain what I'm on about. You see, you've probably heard it say that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and that's certainly the case when it comes to property investment advice. I guess what I'm getting at is there are salespeople and spruikers who seem to be offering a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that sounds too good to be true. Most of these opportunities are around brand new units or off-the-plan apartments or house and land packages because the spruiker, the salesperson, the promoter is making money from the developer, but they also make it sound easy for you because they do the whole process for you and they say, look, we'll take care of it all. It won't cost you a cent. Really? Remember those shiny brochures, the champagne lunches, the rental guarantees, the slick sales offices, they've all got to come at a cost. You're paying for all of this, as well as the very high commissions and kickbacks that the salespeople make for these sort of projects. They're all built into the purchase price. So this built-in learning fee that I'm talking about, the built-in fee that you're paying, often costs you somewhere between 5 and up to 20% of the contract price. And that's the reason why we regularly see valuations for these sort of properties. Not that we buy them for our clients, but we hear the stories of people who bought them and the valuations come in significantly below the contract price. By the way, that's another problem, how you're going to actually then settle when the bank won't lend against the contract price but against their valuation. If you think about it, on $1 million purchase, that could mean that you're giving the developer anywhere between $50,000 and $200,000. And that should be your money, not his. That's why most people who buy those sort of properties don't make any capital growth for the first decade or so. That's quite a learning fee, isn't it? The second fee I want to make you aware of is the opportunity cost fee. That's one we come across regularly at Metropole. Despite the alarming statistics highlighting how badly the majority of investors get it wrong, many investors still just want to go it alone. They want to learn along the way, and unfortunately that can be very expensive. See, for most investors, to them, buying a property is an event. They go off and buy a property usually close to where they live, rather than making it part of a process, meaning it's what they do isn't part of a long-term strategic approach. Most of these investors start off with the property first, or maybe the location, and then they work backwards. They find something that they like, and then they find data. They look for data to confirm, to convince them. That's called confirmation bias, that, hey, I've done it right. The chances of finding an investment-grade asset with wealth-producing rates of return are a long shot. We know that the majority of properties are not what I'd call investment-grade. But if you don't have an investment strategy, a long-term strategy, and a framework to reach your goals, it's almost impossible to stumble across them. We also see existing investors make a similar sort of mistake. What they're doing is they're looking at getting into the next property when they really should be looking at assessing how their existing property portfolio is going. This is another form of opportunity cost fee, because they say, oh, look, my properties, they're doing okay. It's not costing me anything. But when we do a portfolio review for them as part of our strategic plan at Metropole, we show them that if they were getting 2 or 3% better capital growth because their properties are underperforming the averages, how significant that is over the long term. Doesn't seem to be much in the short term, but you've seen those charts where compounding makes the difference so significant over time. So when they say it's not costing me anything, the property's washing its face, I'm not losing money, they're losing opportunity. And I guess there's an element of pride and ego and emotion that gets in the way of making logical and rational decisions. But when we spreadsheeted out, the results are gobsmacking. And so this fee of opportunity cost can run into hundreds of thousands, even millions in some cases. So before I get into the main body of the podcast, what I'm actually talking to you about now is 2 fees that maybe you didn't even realise. And there's one fee that I would suggest you should consider. It's another upfront fee. It's the concept of paying somebody a learning fee before you jump into the property market, preferably somebody who's been there, done that, and as they say, written the book. You pay them to ensure that you get efficient and effective results in the shortest possible time frame with the least risks. And that's where an independent property strategist can assess your situation and provide a solution, and they get paid to see your blind spots and formulate a plan to give you clarity about what's realistic. Now, I know you're probably thinking, hey, Michael, you're biased because your team at Metropole do that. Yes, we do. But we've got audited results that shows that our clients have an 7 to 8 times more chance of owning 6 or more investment properties than the average Australian. What would that be worth to you? Wouldn't that be worth a fee up front? I mean, when you learn to drive a car, you don't just get in a car and drive a car. You learn from somebody, maybe it's your parent, maybe an instructor who's probably driven for decades. Should it really be any different when it comes to property investing? You've heard me say that it takes up to 30 years to become wealthy through property. But that's partly because most investors spend the first 10 years learning what not to do, making mistakes. So the upfront fee to a strategic property plan advice, the upfront fee that you'd be paying to get the plan to help you become the person you plan to become, boy, that's small compared to the mistakes you could make and the lost time involved. Now, with that very long introduction, I now want to get onto the show, the main body of the show, where I'm going to share with you a number of other learning fees that I hope you avoid. And as I said, I'm going to also talk to you a little bit about some people you should avoid to help you become more successful. So, a very belated welcome to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
While property investing may be simple, it's not easy. And that's not a play on words, but you've heard me say it before, that most investors fail because they sell up, 50% sell up in the first 5 years of owning a property. And of those who do stay in the property market, 92% never get past their first or second property. So why do those investors sell up? Why don't people move forward like they are hoping to financially? And the reason is, they're making mistakes. Hey, we all make mistakes, but they're paying a large learning fee. I've often said it takes up to 30 years to develop financial freedom through property, and the first 10 years is learning what not to do. And basically that means that people are making mistakes and paying a fee to the market. So I want to share with you today a number of learning fees, 6 learning fees that I've seen investors pay, that if you become aware of them, you may not have to pay those. And boy, are they expensive. You see, most novice investors think, or are often led to believe, that bricks and mortar's safe, it's easy, and especially as the market's doing so well at the moment, maybe I should just buy any property and it's going to work. No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, these investors find out the hard way, and as I said, the expensive way. So let's look at some of these learning fees. And the first one is, oops, I bought the wrong property learning fee. See, they buy a home to live in, but within a short time they feel it's not right, or they buy an investment property and they realise it's a dud. Buying the home at the moment, in this hot market, a lot of people are taking shortcuts. They're suffering from FOMO. They're worrying about the market moving ahead of them, and they end up with the wrong property. As I said, 20% of investors sell up their properties in the first year, and it's 50% in the first 5 years. So when you decide to sell in that time, regardless of what price you sell the property for, you've got to remember there's huge costs associated with buying and selling property. There's the stamp duty when you bought it, plus the stamp duty for the new place, legal fees when buying and selling agents, commission, marketing costs. And if it's a house, the cost of moving twice as well. This means your learning fee is likely to be tens of thousands of dollars and potentially into six figures when you take into account the lost opportunity cost. So what I'm going to talk about at the moment is a number of the learning fees, and then let's see how we can help you avoid paying those fees. But the first one is, oops, I bought the wrong property. The second learning fee I've seen so many investors pay is the capital not growth learning fee. I'm not sure that's even a word, but that's the fee you pay when you buy an investment property with poor capital growth because it's in the wrong location, in the wrong city, the wrong suburb, the wrong street. So while people talk about the Melbourne property market performing strongly or the Sydney property market performing strongly, you can't really base your decisions on that, because within those markets, there are some properties that outperform and others underperform. And then this media quotes the average, but you don't want to get one of those properties that underperforms. So there's definitely locations and certain properties that so far this year, despite the strong growth, haven't been growing much at all. And I'm not just talking about the very obvious inner CBD apartments, but also certain other locations as well. In fact, if you can find a property that outperforms averages by 3 or 4%, and they're just as easy to find, well, maybe if as long as you know where you're looking, as easy to find as those that are underperforming, which a lot of investors seem to find. But if you find ones that outperform, that makes such a difference over the years. You've seen those compounding charts. And so therefore, the learning fee many investors are making costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars because they don't buy what I call investment grade properties, which deliver wealth producing rates of return. Now, another learning fee that I've seen so many investors pay is the renovation reality learning fee. This is where they pay much more than they expect when they realise that renovations are hard work and nowhere near as easy as those reality TV shows or some of those property blogs would suggest. Look, perhaps you bought a property that needs a significant renovation, and often, if we talk about renovations, I like to keep renovations as opposed to developments or major builds, but I like to keep renovations at around the order of 10% of the purchase price. But I've seen so many people where things end up costing more than the investor expected. The project ran over time. They thought they could handle it themselves, but they got a full-time job. And all that increased the cost substantially. So they ended up sinking, say, 20% of the purchase price into the renovation and overcapitalized their property. The learning fee easily cost them tens and tens of thousands of dollars, as well as the waiting period until the market improved enough to get your money back when you've overcapitalized. So the third learning fee you should avoid is the renovation reality learning fee. The fourth fee that I've unfortunately seen investors pay is the I got eaten by a shark learning fee. Here's where Sam and Susan, a couple of young 25-year-olds, charged into one of those property investment seminars. Well, that's when we used to have seminars. Now they're basically webinars. And they promised they're going to make you millions of dollars in 6 months' time. So instead, our bright young things end up knee-deep in cash flow tables, bank documents, signed investments to buy a property off the plan or out of town, those so-called whiz-bang investment property growth areas that only delivered a miserable rate of return over the years. I know for years there were various experts talking about buying in Logan in Queensland, where unfortunately there's been minimal capital growth despite huge physical growth. It's one of those growth areas where there's lots and lots of new houses, but the demographic wasn't right. Or what about all those people who were eaten by a shark when they bought the new high-rise, shiny off-the-plan properties that just didn't go up in value over 10 years? And that was even before COVID hit and decreased the value of their properties. So unfortunately, a lot of these investors can't even offload their properties without making significant losses. They can't afford to sell. No one's going to buy. They can't make up the loss, and therefore, they're stuck. They'll never get past that first investment property. There's the buying with emotion learning fee. That's the fifth learning fee I want to quickly talk to you about. And you can end up paying this fee in two ways. Firstly, when you fall in love with a property and you overpay. Now, while this may be allowed if you're buying your home, it's a big, big mistake for property investors. The second way you pay this learning fee is when you miss out on an opportunity because you've got unrealistic expectations of what a property's value actually is, and you offer well below an acceptable price. So currently, as our property markets are strong, you've got to be realistic and don't look for a bargain. You're not going to find them. And while you're waiting, by buying with negative emotions in that regard, the market's moving away from you. Another buying with emotion learning fee I see is, at the moment, a lot of people are missing out on auction. If you think about it, more people miss out at every auction than win. Every auction has one successful bidder and often 2, 3, 4 unsuccessful bidders. And these unsuccessful bidders occasionally buy on the rebound. You know what it's like when you lose out on something, you rush in and buy the next one. And some of those investors, and in fact home buyers, they're even more emotional, are buying without doing all the due diligence. They're suddenly compromising on what they expected, or they're paying too much. They're cutting corners just because they've missed out on an auction or even a private sale where somebody beat them to it. So this learning fee, buying with emotion learning fee, is a bit about your own ignorance and not remaining objective and basing your negotiations on cold hard fact, such as recent comparable sales, or the list of things that you want out of your home or don't want out of your home, rather than compromising. Look, either way, the learning fee could cost you a lot. And the sixth learning fee I'd like to discuss with you is the negotiating learning fee. This is the extra cost when you're too afraid or too inexperienced to negotiate for your property. Remember, in most cases, you're dealing with a selling agent who's a trained negotiator. All the big agencies and the big real estate chains spend lots of time training their selling agents to be good negotiators and to read people. And when they see you're out there buying with emotion, they're doing what they're meant to do. They're protecting their client, the vendor, but you end up paying. Many investors, and particularly home buyers, are what I call shark bait to property agents, real estate agents who are highly trained negotiators. They're taught to get the top dollar for their clients, the seller. So what should you do as a property investor or a home buyer? Many of us have been taught to learn from our mistakes. But in my opinion, this is too expensive and too demoralising. Rather than paying a learning fee to the market, why not pay a fee to a professional to protect your interest, to even the odds in your favour? I know a lot of people are starting to use buyer's agents, and that's a start. But I believe you need more than the buyer's agents in this market, because buyer's agents, to be blunt, are order takers. Now, my team at Metropole are buyer's agents. But before we even put a brief to our buyer's agents, it all starts by building a strategic plan to help our clients know what they need to do to get to the end goals they want. In other words, we bring their future to the present and build customised, personalised plan that involves a finance strategy, an asset protection strategy, an investment strategy, and then we give a brief to the buyer's agent. By the way, it's likely to be much cheaper, as it could considerably, significantly reduce your own overall learning fee that you'd make by making a mistake. Look, in life, we all pay. The question is how much and who to. So if you want to avoid some of these common learning fees that, look, we've all made in the past, we've all paid in the past, why not go to metropole.com.au and find out about how my team can help you become a more successful property investor by starting with a strategic plan and then using our buyer's agency, our property management, our renovation services. And if you're a home buyer, we help a lot of home buyers in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane by levelling the playing field, having somebody on your side who's walked the walk, so therefore you don't walk in the landmines and pay the fees you shouldn't need to pay.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
I'd like to have a chat with you about 3 types of people you must avoid if you want to become successful, rich, wealthy. Now, one of the most important decisions we make in life is who we choose to be around. In fact, there's an old proverb that says something along the lines of, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. I remember one of my early mentors, the late Jim Rohn, said it well. He said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Based on that, we must be cautious about who we surround ourselves with because it's got short and long-term implications. Of course, we need people, whether they're mentors, friends, family. We would need people who are going to challenge us, who are going to make us better, thereby raising our average, helping us reach heights that we deserve. Now, I know many entrepreneurs, business people and investors who strive to be the smartest person in the room. But if you're always the smartest person in the room, you're in trouble. You need to surround yourself with people who can run circles around you in as many areas as possible. People who can exponentially improve you. They're much better than you in a variety of ways. They're going to help you grow to the next level. But at the same time, you'll need to learn to avoid certain types of people as well. Think of the people with whom you interact on a regular basis. Have you ever met Mr. Negative, the critic, the victim? Now, I bet you're picturing one of those folks right now. I know I am. You'll find them everywhere. Some of them, there's all those permanent property pessimists, the negative Nellies. Others torpedo your business ideas or your career goals. By the way, I hope you never see one of those when you look in the mirror. You see, pessimists spread negativity like the flu, I guess like coronavirus, so you must limit your exposure to them. The risk in listening to these naysayers is that your own thoughts might slowly begin to echo what these other people are saying, because they've got the power to adversely affect not only your outlook, but how high you aim to achieve. So let's have a closer look at these 3 types of people, so you're going to be able to sidestep them where possible. Now, the first one's Mr. Negative. Now, it could be Mrs. Negative as well. I'm not trying to be sexist here, but Mr. Negative seems to have a problem for every solution, and they love to drain the enthusiasm from any new idea. They'll say things like, oh, that can't be done, or that won't happen, or maybe you can't get rich investing through property. I know people who've lost all their money through property. Mr. and Mrs. Negative is going to suck you into their negative world. And when a window of opportunity opens for you, they're going to pull it down. They're going to pull down the blind so you won't see it. Worse than that, they'll zap your energy and slow down your momentum. You can't expect to lead a positive life if you surround yourself with negative people. The second sort of person to avoid are the critics. Critics are known for finding something derogatory to say about everybody, and they're especially famous for trading confidential or negative information about others. Do you know somebody like that? You know, they like to gossip. They like to control small-minded people. Critics use gossip to get in control of people. So make sure you're never tempted to engage in those sort of shenanigans. Because for them, everyone's fair game, including you. If they're going to talk about other people behind their backs, what are they going to say about you behind your backs? Think about it. I mean, critics are threatened by successful people, by talented people, and the greater the success, the louder their criticism, which they hope will draw the spotlight away from their own unimpressive results. So never let anyone who's done nothing tell you how you should do things. The third type of person to avoid are the victims. You know the type. They never accept personal responsibility for anything that's happened to them. Life is chronically unfair for victims, isn't it? It's not their fault. It's never their fault. It's the boss's fault, the government's fault, the system's fault, or the bank's fault they wouldn't lend me money. The deck's always stacked against victims, and they've got nothing but bad luck. They haven't figured out yet that hard work puts you in the place where good luck can find you, and they're famous for putting in very little effort. If you're around somebody with a cold or the flu, you're likely to catch the cold or the flu. I guess in today's world, if you're around somebody with coronavirus, you're likely to catch coronavirus. So what are you catching from the people around you? Do everything in your power to surround yourself with the right people, because their character traits, their habits, they're contagious, but in a good way. Look for the encouragers and the believers and the high energy movers and shakers who don't have the word can't in their vocabulary. Surround yourself with people who dream bigger than you do, people who believe anything is possible. And you know what? They'll believe in you. Of course, it's also critical to watch your own attitude. We can't always change the people or circumstances in our lives, but we can change our response. So excellence isn't a skill. It's an attitude, and positive thinking breeds rich habits. And you know I'm into rich habits. I've written a book with Tom Corley about rich habits, poor habits, because that's what makes you successful in all areas of your life. I've heard it said that success is never owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day. So my suggestion to you is build the right team of people around you, and they'll help you pay the rent. Well, thanks for spending some one-on-one time with me. In the next show, I'll be back to having my regular guests. But if you got some benefit from today's show, why not tell somebody else about it, somebody who you think would benefit? Because my aim is to make as many Australians financially independent by being successful property investors. If you know somebody who'd get some benefit, tell them about the show. Hey, and I've got a special bonus for you as a way of saying thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't already grabbed them, grab my bundle of ebooks and reports. Go to podcastbonus.com.au and you'll be able to get a bundle of ebooks and reports that will help you become a better property investor. I'll be back again twice a week, but in between, you can catch me on social media. Just look for Michael Yardney, and I'd love you to be part of my private Facebook group where every day I leave a couple of snippets, some ideas, some thoughts, some charts, which you won't get elsewhere. So go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group and join there. And as I was starting to say, I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?